is now, as the Dean mentioned, an honor and a privilege to introduce tonight's guest speaker and our annual Alumni Achievement Award recipient, Mr. Burton Lipsky. Burt graduated from the College of Law in 1962, and he will always be tied to the Law Review in two key milestones, whether you realize this or not, and I think you do, in our journal's history. His first year on Law Review, that's when we went from publishing 2 books to 4 books. And his second year on Law Review, we began publishing the annual survey of New York law, which NYU that year decided not to publish any longer for whatever reason, and we were happy to jump at that chance. That year, Burt was a notes editor on our executive board. Burt began his legal career at the U.S. Department of Justice in the Tax Division in Washington, D.C. And, you know, as we were preparing for tonight's event, I spoke with him on the phone, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this story. He told me of the time that he met Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Of course, it was just about Burt's first day on the job, I believe, third day. Kennedy had entered the room looking for someone else, I believe, and you were sitting there filling out insurance papers. And he turned to you and said, I guess in a perplexed tone, I would imagine, "What are you doing?" And it turns out that he was filling out these papers, and he told the Attorney General that he was filling out these insurance papers, who replied, "Don't worry about that, you're going to run this place in 6 months anyway." I would have loved to have that even brief moment with Robert Kennedy. 5 years later, Burt moved to New York City to work at Kay Scholler as a tax associate. And in 1972, Burt joined Delson & Gordon in New York, practicing tax law and estate planning. There, some of Burt's notable clients included many well-known artists, it turns out, including Robert Mapplethorpe, Salvador Dali, and the estate of Jean-Michel Basquiat. Burt left Delson & Gordon in 1987 to open his own practice, where he continued for 20 years before retiring in 2007. Although he confessed to me on the phone, he still does some work here and there. It's also very important to mention tonight Burt's unending support for the College of Law and our Syracuse Law Review. A longtime volunteer of the law school, Burt served on the College of Law Board of Visitors until 2003. In 2012, he helped organize his golden anniversary, the 50th class reunion. Last year, his generosity helped publish our annual survey of New York law, and we're thankful for that support. And as many of you may have noticed, in our Law Review office, there's a plaque that bears his name adorning the wall to recognize his contributions to our Law Review in our law school. I had the pleasure of meeting Burt for the first time last fall, and you know, right away you could tell that this is a guy who lives a rich, fulfilling life, not only professionally, but just personally speaking. You can even tell by the big grin on his face tonight. He's a very happy guy with a positive spirit and a sunny disposition. And as I mentioned in the program tonight, Burt's accomplishments illustrate what hard work and a dedication can do for you both while in school and certainly thereafter. Tonight, please join me in proudly honoring Burt Lipsky with the Syracuse Law Review Annual Alumni Achievement Award for 2014.
Good evening, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, absolutely delighted to be able to accept this wonderful achievement award, and thank you very much to all of you, the board, and for naming me. It really is, after all these years, a great thrill, and it personifies how I feel about Syracuse Law School, the Law Review, and it's a wonderful thing for me and my family. So I did bring, just in case anybody had any doubts, because it's one thing, you know, there's an opinion, you know, that I did something, but just so you know, this award only goes to Law Review editors, Law Review people. Well, here's the proof. 1961, 1962, a couple copies of the Syracuse Law Review. For all of you, it's going to look pretty primitive. You got to, but in any event, it was ours. We're proud of it, and still proud of it. And I got a lot more at home, but I just brought 2 of them, just in case anybody needed the proof. So in following the precept that Mark set down for me, and isn't he wonderful, that brief, I figured one thing that maybe I can talk about that's is something we all have in common, or everybody here from the Law Review have in common, and that is working for the Law Review. After all, 2013, 2014, maybe some of you 2015, I was here in the winter of 1960, the entire year 61, and all the way to June 62. So 2.5 years working for the Law Review. And so let me just compare a little bit, because Mark and I have had a bunch of conversations as he mainly wanted to know some things about me, but we didn't talk about what it is today. So let me just tell you what went on then. So I got here, my class was, Peter Blauvelt is here, John Martin is here, 2 of my classmates. We had about 105 people when we started. We graduated about 80. And after the first semester, even though there was probably only 1 or 2 courses where the final really meant something, we took finals and everything, and I don't know if they still do it that way. So the people who did the best were invited to write for the Law Review. So as a first year student, second semester, we came on and did whatever we did, and we started writing. I started writing a recent decision article that eventually got published. The second year, we were named the associate editors. It was interesting that basically the people who did come on as associate editors were the people who generally were at the top of the class. There was not a writing competition as such. They figured if you could pass these exams with decent grades, you became a Law Review editor. But one thing that was very nice that I always appreciated about the Law Review is that people were who were interested could write an article and have it edited and prepared and whatever. And so it got lots of people with the experience. And that experience, let me just digress for a minute before we get away from this history. You know, I went to 3 trade schools. I went to Michigan Business School as an undergrad. I went to Syracuse Law School to learn the law. And then I went to NYU master's program in tax. Well, all of them were teaching me a trade. There was nobody teaching me how to write from my junior, senior year in high school. And where that came about was not only I wrote 2 recent decision articles and 1 note. And writing those was key, but even more important in my development as a writer was the editing process, and dealing not only with the lead articles. We'd get manuscripts and we'd work on them. We'd do the notes editors and whatnot would work on the notes. We also worked on the art. But that editing process, and I never fashioned myself when I was in high school or whatever as much of a writer, but during my career, I got a lot of compliments for my writing. Hey, I'm not going to write fiction that you're never going to want to read. But as far as writing an analysis and a case and talking about what things that are brief, and that really came from this Law Review experience. There's no question, when you talk about when I had a plaque or whatever it is, I mean, I felt that the Law Review gave me that opportunity and taught me how to write, and in a much more proficient way than I ever would have anywhere else, and couldn't get anywhere else, where I'm going to a series of quote, trade schools, unquote. The law review was really key. Well, in any event, so getting back, so second year, we were all associate editors and whatnot, and there was one fellow in my class, he and I were bouncing back and forth between number 1 and number 2. He'd be number 1 in the spring, in the fall, and I'd be number 1 in the spring. And when they picked the law review editor, he was number 1 because it was after the fall semester. So he became editor. And I'll tell you, whatever you want to say, and I bet this continues to now, I mean, I did a lot of work for the law review. I was there almost every day, but there's nothing like what the editor-in-chief does. That was a whole different experience back in the day, and it's like everything else. When you're the head of a small corporation or a small business, it's the guy in charge that's there all the time and really falls ultimate responsibility. But that was a wonderful year. We had very nice people and really got along well. But that experience has stood me in good stead. It's now 52 years since I graduated this place, and I love it. And so I'm delighted to be here. I thank the board very much for recognizing me, and I accept the award with great humility and great gratitude. Thank you.
Judge, don't go anywhere.
Peter.
Judge, come back up. You're going to take another picture, I hope.
Oh.
Burt, on behalf of the Law Review, we are very pleased to present you with this engraved Stickley clock that I know that you'll display proudly in your home or office or wherever you may be. But thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks, Mark.